The courtroom was crowded that morning. People had come to see the case of a young boy named Malik. He was only 17, but the charges against him were serious. Some whispered that he was reckless, others believed he was misunderstood. The wooden benches creaked as more people sat down, waiting to see what would happen. At the front of the room sat Judge Howard, a man known for his strict face and sharp tone. He had been on the bench for many years and believed he had seen every type of case. When Malik was brought forward, dressed in a simple shirt and trousers, the judge leaned back in his chair and gave a small laugh. To him, the boy looked too young to be in such a place, and the idea of him defending himself seemed almost foolish. Malik stood straight, his eyes calm. The officer beside him read out the charges, and the room fell silent. Some people shook their heads, already believing that the boy had no chance. Malik's mother sat quietly in the corner, her hands gripping each other tightly. She wanted to believe her son would be safe, but her heart was heavy. The judge cleared his throat and said, "Young man, I hear you plan to speak for yourself. Do you even understand what this means?" His voice carried doubt, and his smile showed that he expected nothing impressive. A low chuckle ran through the benches. People thought it would be over quickly. They imagined Malik stuttering or failing to answer even the first question. But Malik did not look nervous. Instead, he adjusted his sleeves and gave a respectful nod. "Yes, Your Honor," he said in a steady voice. "I understand what it means, and I am ready to speak." The judge raised an eyebrow. He leaned forward as if testing the boy's courage. "Very well. Let us hear you then." The air inside the courtroom grew tense. Malik stepped closer, his voice calm but firm. He began by repeating the charges, line by line, and then explained why they were not as clear as they seemed. His words were simple, but the way he spoke carried power. He used examples, asked questions, and pointed out small details that most people had not even noticed in the reports. The crowd, which had been ready to laugh, now leaned in to listen. The officer who had once stood tall with confidence looked uncertain. Even the prosecutor shifted in his seat. Malik's tone was not childish. It was measured, careful, and sharp, just like a trained lawyer. Judge Howard, who had expected nothing but nervous words, froze for a moment. His smile faded, replaced by a look of surprise. He tapped his pen against the desk, trying to hide his reaction, but everyone in the room could see it. Malik's mother's eyes filled with tears, not of fear this time, but of pride. She had always known her son loved reading, that he spent long nights studying books others ignored. He had no money to hire a lawyer, but he had knowledge, and that knowledge gave him strength. As Malik continued, he quoted parts of the law, showing that he understood the rules better than anyone had expected. He explained his side of the story in a way that was clear, respectful, and convincing. Every sentence was steady, without hesitation. The room grew so quiet that the sound of pages turning could be heard. A man in the back whispered, "He speaks like a real attorney." By the time Malik finished, the judge was no longer laughing. He placed his hands together and studied the young boy in front of him. What had started as a simple case now looked different. The crowd could feel the change too. Something powerful had happened in that room. Judge Howard finally spoke, his voice lower than before. "I must say, young man, you have surprised this court today." Malik bowed his head slightly and answered, "Thank you, Your Honor. I only wanted the truth to be heard." The silence that followed was heavy, but it was not the silence of boredom. It was the silence of respect. People in the room knew that this trial was no longer ordinary. It was the beginning of something none of them had expected. The courtroom still buzzed with whispers after Malik's words. People had expected a nervous boy, but what they saw was a calm speaker who carried the weight of knowledge. The judge had not smiled since Malik began, and now his serious expression showed that he was paying full attention. The prosecutor, a man named Mr. Gray, cleared his throat and stood. He had prepared for an easy case, but now he needed to adjust. "Your Honor," he said, "the boy speaks well, but speaking is not proof. The evidence will show what is true." Malik turned his head slightly toward Mr. Gray. His eyes did not show fear. "Evidence can speak," Malik replied, "but only if it is complete. I ask the court to see the whole picture, not only half of it." Some people in the benches smiled at Malik's courage. The judge nodded slowly and allowed the case to move forward. The first witness was called, an officer who had been part of Malik's arrest. He stepped up with confidence, but Malik's questions quickly cut through that. "Officer," Malik began, his tone polite, "you say I was at the scene at 9 o'clock. Are you certain of the time?" "Yes," the officer said firmly. "Then how is it," Malik continued, holding up a report, "that the first call to your station was logged at 9:20? That would mean the incident began later than you claim." The courtroom went still. The officer hesitated, his eyes moving to the paper. He had not expected Malik to read the report so carefully. Judge Howard leaned forward. "Answer the question," he said. The officer shifted uncomfortably. "It may have been closer to 9:20. I must have remembered the time wrongly." Gasps filled the room. The first crack in the case had appeared. Malik's mother pressed her hands together in silent prayer. Mr. Gray tried to recover. He brought another witness, but again Malik's careful questions showed weaknesses in the testimony. He asked simple things: where they were standing, what they saw, what the light was like. Slowly, their answers showed confusion and gaps. By the third witness, people in the benches were no longer bored. They leaned forward, waiting for Malik's next question. It was as if they were watching not a boy on trial, but a skilled young attorney defending his life. When the judge called for a short break, the courtroom broke into chatter. A man whispered, "This boy is sharper than half the lawyers I've seen." Another woman nodded, saying, "He knows exactly what to ask." During the break, Malik sat quietly, his head lowered. His mother leaned close. "Son, you are doing well," she whispered, her voice shaking. "But are you not afraid?" Malik smiled softly. "I was afraid when they first accused me, Mother. But then I remembered what you always said, that truth is stronger than fear. So I will keep speaking." Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of hope. When the court resumed, Malik asked if he could present his own evidence. The judge allowed it. Malik placed a notebook on the desk. Inside were notes he had written about the night in question. He explained where he had been, who had seen him, and even showed receipts from a small store where he had bought food at the same time the officer had claimed he was elsewhere. The judge studied the papers carefully. His stern face did not soften, but his silence spoke louder than words. Mr. Gray grew uneasy. He raised his voice, saying, "Your Honor, this is only a boy. He is trying to play a game with the court." Malik looked directly at him and answered, "I am not playing, sir. I am defending myself because the truth must be spoken, no matter who stands here." The room grew silent again. Even Mr. Gray had no quick reply. As the session ended for the day, People left the courtroom still talking about what they had seen. Some said Malik would win. Others warned that the system was too strong. But all agreed on one thing: the boy had changed the way the trial felt. Judge Howard gathered his papers, paused, and glanced at Malik. For the first time, his eyes did not show doubt. Instead, they showed curiosity. It was clear to everyone that the next day in court would be even more important. The next morning the courtroom was even more crowded. News had spread quickly about the young boy who spoke like a trained attorney. Reporters had come, neighbors filled the benches, and even people who had no connection to the case wanted to see it with their own eyes. When Malik entered, he walked calmly, though his heart beat fast. He could feel all the eyes on him, but he reminded himself of the promise he had made to his mother that he would stand strong until the truth was clear. Judge Howard took his seat, his face as serious as always. But those who watched closely noticed that he no longer looked at Malik with amusement. Instead, he studied him with careful attention. The prosecutor, Mr. Gray, stood tall and began. "Your Honor, we must not forget the charges. The boy speaks well, but charm cannot erase facts. Today I will present stronger evidence." He called a new witness, a shopkeeper who claimed to have seen Malik near the scene. The man spoke confidently, saying Malik was there at the wrong time. The crowd nodded, thinking this sounded convincing. But Malik rose slowly, notebook in hand. He walked forward with steady steps. "Sir," he said respectfully, "you say you saw me that evening. Can you tell the court exactly what I was wearing?" The shopkeeper hesitated. "You wore a dark jacket," he said. Malik shook his head gently. "I did not own a dark jacket that month. I have only this light shirt, which I wore that day as well." "Are you certain it was me you saw?" The shopkeeper shifted uncomfortably. "It was dark. Perhaps I made a mistake." Gasps ran through the benches. Another piece of the prosecutor's case began to weaken. Malik turned to the judge. "Your Honor, witnesses must be clear. If they are not, their words should not be treated as strong proof." Judge Howard gave a slow nod. "The point is noted." Mr. Gray frowned but pressed on. He brought forward a photo taken by a security camera. "This," he said proudly, "shows the boy near the street at the time of the incident." The crowd murmured. At first glance, the figure in the picture did look like Malik. Malik took the photo and studied it carefully. Then he turned it around to face the judge and the room. "Your Honor, may I ask everyone to look closely at the clock in this picture? It shows 10 o'clock. But the report from the officer says 9:20. Why is there such a gap in time?" The courtroom stirred again. Even Judge Howard leaned forward to look closely at the photo. Mr. Gray quickly spoke. "The time may be slightly wrong in the camera." Malik responded firmly, "If the time is wrong, how can we trust the picture at all? If the time is right, then it proves I was not where they said earlier. Either way, it does not support the charges." The silence that followed was heavy. People began to whisper, "He is right. The boy is right." Mr. Gray's face turned red, but he tried to recover. "He is twisting words," he argued. "Do not be fooled." Malik stood tall and said clearly, "I am not twisting words. I am asking for truth. If truth makes someone uncomfortable, then perhaps they did not expect to face it." The crowd clapped softly before the judge raised his hand for silence. Judge Howard's eyes rested on Malik for a long moment. His expression was unreadable, but everyone knew he was impressed by the young boy's reasoning. As the session closed for the day, People left buzzing with excitement. Outside the courthouse, small groups gathered, speaking about the boy who challenged the system with nothing but his mind. Some said he was gifted, others said he was simply brave. Inside, Malik sat with his mother. She touched his shoulder gently. "You are doing something great, my son," she whispered. Malik smiled faintly. "I am only speaking what I know. If the truth is strong, it will stand." But deep inside, Malik also knew the battle was not yet over. Mr. Gray would not give up so easily. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and he would need even more strength to face them. The courthouse was filled to the edge on the third day. Some people had to stand along the walls because all the benches were taken. The story of a young boy who spoke like an attorney had spread through the town. Everyone wanted to see if Malik could continue his fight or if the weight of the trial would finally crush him. Malik entered with steady steps, but his mind was alert. He knew each day brought new traps, and the prosecutor would try harder to break him. His mother sat quietly in the same corner as before, her hands resting in her lap. Though she said nothing, her presence gave Malik strength. Judge Howard entered and struck the gavel. His deep voice filled the room. "Court is in session." Mr. Gray, the prosecutor, rose with a firm face. He was no longer calm. The boy had embarrassed him twice, and today he planned to take control. "Your Honor," he said loudly, "I present a key witness, one who knows this boy well. He will prove Malik is not the innocent figure he pretends to be." Whispers filled the room as a young man walked forward. He was about Malik's age, with quick eyes and nervous hands. Malik recognized him at once. It was Darren, a boy from his own neighborhood. They had once played together, but in recent years Darren had drifted toward trouble. Darren stood before the court and said, "I saw Malik near the place of the incident. He was there. I know because I was close." The crowd gasped. A childhood friend pointing a finger carried weight. Mr. Gray looked satisfied, but Malik stayed calm. He rose slowly, holding his notebook. "Darren," he said gently, "you and I grew up on the same street, did we not?" "Yes," Darren answered, shifting in his place. "And you know me better than most here?" "Yes." "Then tell me," Malik asked, his voice steady, "why did you not speak about this the day I was arrested? Why wait until now?" Darren hesitated. He glanced at Mr. Gray before replying. "I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" Malik pressed. "Afraid of getting involved." Malik nodded, then stepped closer. "But you are involved now. Did someone ask you to come forward?" Darren's silence stretched long. His eyes darted toward the prosecutor again. The crowd stirred uneasily. Judge Howard leaned forward. "Answer the question." Darren swallowed hard. "Yes. I was asked." "By whom?" Malik's voice rose, not in anger, but with clear purpose. Darren's lips trembled. At last he said, "By Mr. Gray." The room erupted with shock. People turned to stare at the prosecutor. Mr. Gray quickly stood, his face red. "This is nonsense. The witness is confused." But Malik did not back away. He looked straight at Darren. "Did he promise you something if you spoke against me?" Darren lowered his head. "He said it would help me with my own case." Gasps filled the air again. Malik turned toward the judge. "Your Honor, this shows the testimony is not free of pressure. A witness must speak truth, not what he is told to say." Judge Howard's face was stern. He banged the gavel to quiet the noise. Order. This matter will be noted. Mr. Gray tried to argue, but his words sounded weaker now. The judge's sharp eyes did not leave him, and the people in the benches murmured with distrust. Malik returned to his seat, his heart beating fast. He knew the fight was far from over, but he had cut deep into the prosecutor's case. His mother leaned closer, whispering, "You are brave, my son." Malik whispered back, "Truth gives courage." As the court ended for the day, the air buzzed with excitement. Reporters hurried to write their stories, people crowded outside to talk, and everyone agreed that the trial was no longer just about one boy. It had become a question of fairness, of honesty, and of whether truth could win against power. Judge Howard closed his papers and paused to glance at Malik. For the first time, his face showed something new, not only respect, but also concern. He understood now that this case might test not only the boy, but the very court itself. By the fourth day of the trial, the courthouse had turned into a place of great attention. People lined up outside before the doors opened. Some wanted justice, some wanted drama, and many came simply to see the boy who spoke like a lawyer. Malik entered the room with calm steps, but inside he was tired. The long hours of thinking, reading, and speaking had worn him down. Still, when he looked at his mother in the corner, he found new strength. She did not speak, yet her eyes said, "Keep going, my son." Judge Howard struck the gavel. Court is in session. Mr. Gray, the prosecutor, looked restless. His plans had weakened day after day. Still, he rose with determination. "Your Honor," he said, "today I will bring forward evidence that cannot be twisted. This will show clearly that the boy was guilty." Two officers carried in a small box. Inside were items said to belong to Malik, an old bag and a small tool found near the scene. The prosecutor lifted them up. These were found close to the place. They carry the mark of the accused. No clever words can change that. The crowd whispered. Physical items seemed harder to deny. Malik rose slowly and asked permission to examine them. The judge allowed it. He lifted the bag and looked closely. Then he turned it around so the court could see. "Your Honor, this is not my bag. I own no bag with this design. My neighbors know this." Mr. Gray smirked. "Anyone can deny, but facts remain." Malik did not argue. Instead, he pointed at the inside corner of the bag where a faint label was stitched. "This name here, this is not mine. The name is faint, but if the court allows, it can be checked." The judge leaned forward. Indeed, small letters could be seen. He ordered that it be examined. The second item was the tool. Malik held it carefully. "This is said to be mine, but Your Honor, may I ask for fingerprints to be checked? If it is mine, they will show it. If it is not, the truth will be clear." The request was unusual for someone without a lawyer, but Judge Howard allowed it. He ordered the court officers to carry out the test. The crowd buzzed again. Many whispered that Malik was bold, asking for science instead of words. During the break, Malik sat quietly, his hands folded. His mother leaned close and whispered, "You are walking a hard road, but I believe the truth will stand." He nodded. "It must, Mother. If not, then justice is only a shadow." When the court returned, the officers brought results. The name inside the bag was indeed different. It belonged to someone else, not Malik. And the fingerprints on the tool did not match Malik at all. The courtroom burst with sound. Some clapped, others shouted in surprise. Judge Howard struck the gavel sharply. Order. Malik bowed his head slightly. Your Honor, I thank you for allowing the check. This shows how dangerous it is to judge too quickly. The prosecutor's face burned red. He tried to speak. It must be a mistake in the test. It cannot be trusted. But Judge Howard shook his head. The evidence speaks clearly. We cannot ignore it. For the first time, the balance of the trial seemed to lean strongly toward Malik. People whispered with excitement. Reporters scribbled notes quickly. Even the officers in the back exchanged glances. As the session ended, Malik walked out with his mother by his side. Outside, people gathered around, some cheering softly, others asking questions. Malik did not raise his voice or act proud. He only said, "The truth is not mine alone. It belongs to all who seek it." That night, as he sat by the small lamp in his room, Malik opened his notebook again. He reviewed his notes, line by line. He knew Mr. Gray would not give up. Tomorrow might bring another surprise, perhaps stronger than before. But Malik's mind was clear. He would not fear what was to come. Judge Howard, too, sat alone in his office late that evening. He placed the reports on his desk and rubbed his forehead. The boy had shown skill beyond his years. Yet the judge also felt a weight pressing on him. This was no longer a simple trial. It had become a test of the court's own honor. The morning of the fifth day felt heavier than the days before. Clouds hung low over the town, and the courthouse seemed colder. People still crowded inside, eager to see what would happen next, but the air carried a sense of tension. Everyone knew the trial was reaching its most difficult stage. Malik entered quietly, his notebook in hand. His eyes showed no fear, yet his steps were slower than usual. He had slept little the night before, reading and preparing until the lamp burned low. His mother followed behind, her face calm but her heart worried. Judge Howard called the court to order. His voice was steady, but even he looked more serious than before. "This case is close to its end," he announced. "We will hear what remains." Mr. Gray, the prosecutor, stood with a determined look. He had lost ground again and again, but he was not ready to accept defeat. "Your Honor," he began, "the boy has spoken well, but today I will show the court something different. It is not about objects or witnesses. It is about his own past." The crowd stirred at these words. Mr. Gray held up a folder filled with papers. "This file," he said, "contains records of small troubles Malik has faced before: late nights, warnings at school, small fights. A boy who breaks rules again and again cannot be trusted." Gasps filled the room. Malik's mother lowered her head, her hands trembling. Malik, however, lifted his chin. He asked calmly, "Your Honor, may I see the file?" The judge allowed it. Malik opened the folder and read silently for a few moments. Then he looked up. "These are not hidden things," he said firmly. "Yes, I was late at school. Yes, I argued with classmates. But are these crimes? No. They are mistakes of youth. Every young person stumbles. If this court punishes mistakes of childhood as proof of guilt, then none of us can stand clean." The room fell silent. Malik's words were not angry but full of quiet strength. He continued, "The law does not judge people by what they once did, but by what they did in the moment of the charge. This file is not proof of the crime. It is only proof that I am human." The crowd murmured in agreement. Even some who had doubted him nodded slowly. Judge Howard raised a hand. "The point is well made. Past behavior cannot replace clear evidence. Mr. Gray frowned deeply. He had hoped the file would stain Malik's name, but instead it had given him another chance to shine. Still, he was not finished. He called forward one last officer who claimed he saw Malik at the edge of the street that night. The officer spoke firmly, describing the scene in detail. For a moment, his story sounded stronger than the others. The crowd leaned forward, sensing a true challenge. Malik stood and asked gently, "Officer, how far were you standing when you claim you saw me?" "About 30 steps, the officer replied. "And the street," Malik asked, "was it bright or dark?" "Dark, except for one lamp." Malik nodded slowly. He opened his notebook and pulled out a sketch he had drawn. "Your Honor, I visited that street many times. The lamp he speaks of was broken for weeks before the night in question. I asked the court to confirm this with the town records." The judge paused. "Can this be verified?" An assistant quickly checked the town's repair log. After a few minutes, he returned with a paper. "It is true. The street lamp was reported broken 2 weeks before and was not fixed until days after the incident." A wave of whispers swept through the benches. Malik bowed slightly. "If the lamp was broken, how could the officer see my face so clearly from 30 steps away? His words cannot stand as truth." Judge Howard struck the gavel. "The record confirms it. The testimony is weak." The prosecutor sank into his chair, his face pale. The crowd erupted with excitement, voices rising in disbelief and praise. Malik's mother pressed her hands to her mouth, tears filling her eyes. As the court ended for the day, Judge Howard's voice carried through the room. "Tomorrow, this case will move to its final stage. Both sides will give closing words, and then judgment will be made." The crowd left buzzing with energy. Some said the boy had already won, others warned that nothing was certain until the gavel fell. That night, Malik sat by the window of his small room. He looked at the dark sky and whispered to himself, "One more day. One more chance to speak." His heart was heavy, but also strong. He knew tomorrow would decide everything. The courthouse was crowded early that morning. Everyone had waited for the final day of the trial. People whispered about Malik, some praising his courage, others still doubting the outcome. Cameras and reporters filled the back of the room, ready to capture every moment. Malik entered quietly, his notebook in hand, but his steps were steady. His mother followed, her eyes shining with hope. He had faced every challenge calmly, and now it was time for the final words to be heard. Judge Howard called the court to order. "Today, we will hear closing statements from both sides," he announced. His voice carried authority, but also a hint of respect toward Malik. Mr. Gray, the prosecutor, rose first. His face was tense, his voice strong. "Your Honor, the boy has spoken well, and the court has seen his arguments. But let us not forget the charges. There was an incident, and items were found near the scene. I ask the court to weigh the seriousness of the situation carefully." Malik listened quietly. When Mr. Gray finished, he stood slowly. Every eye in the room turned toward him. The silence was heavy. Malik took a deep breath and began to speak. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the court," he said clearly, "I am only one person, and I am not perfect. I have made mistakes like anyone else. But the charges brought against me are not true. Every item, every witness, every story has been examined carefully, and none prove I did anything wrong. The truth must guide the court, not assumptions, not fear, and not pressure." The room was silent. Malik's voice was calm, respectful, and strong. I ask only that the court see what actually happened. I was not at the scene. I did not commit this act. Those who spoke against me were mistaken or pressured. Justice is not about winning or losing. It is about fairness, honesty, and truth. Judge Howard leaned forward, listening carefully. Malik continued, I stand here today not to argue with anyone, but to show the truth clearly. I hope this court sees that the law is fair, and that fairness is what matters most. He bowed slightly and returned to his seat. The room stayed quiet for a long moment. Even Mr. Gray seemed unsure of what to say next. The judge then spoke. Both sides have presented their case. I have listened carefully to every word, examined every piece of evidence, and considered every argument. He paused, letting the moment stretch. The crowd leaned forward, sensing the weight of what was about to come. Malik, Judge Howard said finally, you have faced this court with courage and clarity. Your questions have been thoughtful, your evidence has been precise, and your words have been honest. The law must follow truth, and in this case, the truth is clear. Malik's mother held her breath. His friends and neighbors whispered nervously. I find the defendant not guilty. The words rang through the room like a bell. A wave of relief and joy swept across the courthouse. People clapped and cheered softly, careful to respect the solemnity of the court, yet unable to hide their happiness. Malik's mother rushed forward and hugged him tightly. Tears streamed down her face, but they were tears of joy. Malik stood quietly, his own eyes wet. He had worked hard, stayed calm, and spoken the truth, and now justice had been served. He looked at Judge Howard and nodded respectfully. The judge gave a small, approving smile. You have reminded us all that courage and knowledge can overcome doubt and fear. You have done well, Malik. Malik nodded again. He felt tired but proud. He had faced the strongest challenges, stood up for himself, and proved that truth and fairness matter more than appearances or power. Outside the courthouse, people gathered and spoke excitedly. Reporters wrote their stories, calling Malik the boy who had amazed the town with his mind and courage. Some said his story would inspire others, reminding everyone that no one is too small to speak for the truth. Malik walked out into the sunlight, holding his mother's hand. He took a deep breath and smiled. The trial was over, but the lessons he had learned would last a lifetime. Courage, honesty, and knowledge had carried him through. As the crowd slowly dispersed, Malik looked at the sky and whispered softly, truth will always find its way. And in that moment, he felt stronger, ready for whatever challenges might come next, knowing that fairness and courage would always guide him.